webinar tonight. We have had probably the most, I think we're about 75 registrations or something now. So that's the most people we've ever had for one of our webinars. So welcome to everyone attending tonight and to everyone who's sort of watching this a little bit later on. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Carly Saw. I'm the Director of Strawberry Seed Consulting, and I'd like to introduce Frances Orr, who is sharing the job with me of doing this webinar tonight. Frances is our Principal HR Advisor, and she also does all our mental health first aid training.
Evening, everyone.
I hope you all have a wine or a tea or whatever it is that your preference is for this time of night. It's been a week, so I certainly think I need a wine. And I will apologise in advance for dogs that are trying to break into my office right now. The fact my husband's going to come home with food for my teenagers any moment and probably make a lot of noise. And then there'll be a lot of thumping upstairs above my office as they all go in the kitchen to find food. So that's just a preemptive warning on background noises for me. So let's get started because we have a lot to get through tonight. So I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Wadawurrung land that I'm on and the Wurundjeri land that Frances is on tonight, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that may be with us today. Just briefly, for those that don't know us, we are Strawberry Seed Consulting, and we are a small boutique HR consulting firm, and we work with clients all across the country. So this is my gorgeous team. We've unfortunately Nat decided not to come back after maternity leave, so we're down to 9, but a few people have increased their hours, so that's been great. And we're located in Torquay, Geelong, Melbourne, WA and Queensland at the moment. So let's get right into this minimum wage increase that's going to hit from the first pay period after 1 July. So what will that increase be? So for 2023, that increase will be 5.75% for both the minimum wage and the award minimum wage. So last year they were slightly different, which was unusual, but this year they're both absolutely in line with each other. So if you are award free, then the minimum wage has gone up to $23.23 per hour. But if you are under an award, or pretty much every single award level has now increased by 5.75%. Now, before we start, anyone that's been to one of these before has definitely seen this slide, but I think it's really important to understand how our laws work and how the different aspects of employment law work within a workplace so we can understand where what we're talking about today sits. So the National Employment Standards, or the Fair Work Act, which is the legislation that anyone who works within Australia has to operate under, that underpins everything. So they're like, I refer them as the 10 commandments. They apply to everybody, regardless of industry, regardless of what their profession is. And they sort of, Fair Work, the Fair Work Ombudsman, who oversees that, they're the ones, they have a committee that sets the minimum wage increase every single year. The next level in our system is industrial instruments. So that might be an award or it might be an enterprise agreement. Now, if you are under an enterprise-based agreement, then it may be that that increase is already been set within an agreement that has been agreed over when that agreement was ratified by Fair Work. But today we're really focusing on awards. So those people that are covered by an award and making sure that everyone understands how to make sure they are compliant with that award when it comes to pay. And the third level is the contractual arrangements. So that's the agreement you have between yourself and your employee in writing. It's really important to note for each level as it builds, it can't be less than the level below it. So it's really, you can't have something in your contract that offers less than what someone would be entitled to under an industrial instrument or under the Fair Work Act. So really today we're kind of focused in that space of industrial instruments. So it's essentially an industrial instrument such as an award actually just sets the minimum entitlements to employees in a particular profession or a particular industry. So they can be either profession-based or industry-based. A A lot of times throughout an award, it will actually refer back to the Fair Work Act as the minimum standards, but often there are also differences. And it can be anything from the thing we're focusing on today, minimum wage, breaks, penalties, loadings, allowances, what the minimum hours are per shift, span of hours, shift work, all of those things are contained within an industrial instrument. Now, some businesses might have multiple industrial instruments or awards that actually cover them. You know, a good example of that would be the Building and Construction Award. That award covers everyone who works in that building and construction industry, but it doesn't cover administration employees. In that industry, administration employees are covered by the Clerical Award. On the other hand, we work a lot with the Health Services Award, and that award actually covers people who work in allied health and medical practices. But what it does, that particular award covers both the practitioners and also the administration and support staff. So it's important to understand that some businesses could have 3 or 4 awards that cover them. Some could all be under one. So you need to be aware of that, and you need to ensure you're referring to the correct award when it comes to working out what you need to pay legally. There is a full list of awards on the Fair Work website. I see people save down copies of awards. I see other websites save copies to an award. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to always go, if you're looking up something on an award, always go to the pay guides or the actual copy of the award that is on the Fair Work website. It's the only way you're going to know that's the most recent version of it. Because I have seen many times where industry bodies or someone else saves it down somewhere else. And if you Google it, you might end up on one that's not the current version. So it's the best way to make sure you have got the right information is to always go directly to the Fair Work website. And the other way to know it's the most up-to-date version is that right at the top of the award that you open, now the example we've got here is the Health Professionals and Support Services Award 2020. Right up the top there, this only happened on the weekend. We've been hitting refresh at Strawberry Seed for the last 2 weeks, waiting for these awards to be updated. But the statement that says the Fair Work Commission Consolidated Modern Award incorporates all amendments up to and including 1 July. And it actually tells you which clauses were amended at that time. And so in this case, it was the minimum rates to both support services and health professionals and the national training wage. They were the things that were updated in this particular award. So that's how you know you're looking at the most recent one and you know that it's been updated. And there's also a data review at the top of all the pay guides as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Frances now, who is going to get into the nitty-gritty of working out how you know you're paying correctly.
Ooh, thank you, Carly. So yes, essentially that is quite a hefty increase this year. And you must make sure that you are paying minimum award rates as a minimum. That is your legal requirement. So what I'm going to talk about now is I'm just going to chat through what we need to understand and to talk through hopefully some real-time examples of the benchmarking or the Better Off Overall tests that we ourselves are knee-deep in at the moment at Strawberry Seed. It's good to note, and Carly has mentioned that the increases apply from the first full pay period after the 1st of July. So if your pay period finishes on the 5th of July, your increases do not apply until the 6th of July pay cycle. So sometimes we have a bit of time up our sleeves. Other times your pay cycle might have ended on the 1st of July and it applies from the 2nd. So just something to be wary of. Sometimes, depending on your pay cycle, when that falls, you will have a little bit of time up your sleeve to actually apply these changes if necessary. Thank you, Carly. Next slide. So what we do, and this is sort of our process here at Strawberry Seed, is when we have a minimum wage increase, there are a lot of things that we start to do. And these are things that you guys as employers should also be doing. So what do we do? How do we get started? So one of the best places to start is to have a think about if there's been any changes. So questions like, has any of your team swapped shifts, changed their hours? Has there actually been changes to trading hours? Do any of your hours fall outside of your ordinary span of hours? Has anyone in the team changed their role? Have they increased their responsibilities? Have any employees had a change to benefits? Has anyone increased or decreased anything? And lastly, has anyone had a birthday? If you do hire anyone that's usually it's under 21, they can often have junior rates applied. So it's always good to just double check that there's no increases based on age. Thank you, Carly. The next step is to review your employee classifications. Now, every award has different classification structures. They're different, and some have different sort of progression points and sort of definitions and responsibilities, etc. So do check your awards really carefully, and as Carly just mentioned, you may have several awards that apply to your business, so it's good to make sure you understand what the classifications are in each of those. Now, as a general rule, classifications are based on things like your qualifications or your skills. Sometimes it can be based on the experience that the person has had, and quite often it will be what the responsibilities or the tasks are involved in that role. And you'll see there that is another excerpt from the from the Health Professionals Award. Schedule A is usually where the classification definitions will sit. We get a lot of questions about classifications and how to classify. The Health Professionals Award one is key. We work with it a lot, and sometimes it can feel a little bit daunting to sort of interpret those. But if in doubt, give us a call. That's exactly what we're here for. But general rule of thumb is we're looking at qualifications, experience, and what the responsibilities of the role are. Thank you, Carly. So look, depending on your award, progression through classifications may happen automatically, if you like. Under the Health Professionals Award, it does move through pay points annually, or based on a certain amount of hours worked per year. And it may also change with a change in role or responsibilities. So you absolutely need to make sure that you are monitoring the classifications. As a general rule of thumb, let's take an example for a health professional. If they are working full-time, for example, and they're within a level, say level 1, they will automatically move through to the next pay point at their anniversary, at their 12-month anniversary. So it's always really good to maybe even just jot down when people start, just so that you can monitor that. It is something we do when we do the benchmarking, but it's an approach you can take, either doing it sort of twice annually, once annually, or on everyone's anniversary. It's good to understand also that the classifications generally are what the majority of the responsibilities in the role are. So when you're looking at and trying to understand the definitions, it's assuming that that person will do most of those responsibilities. Thank you, Carly. Oh, sorry, just go back one, sorry. Oh, technical issues. Oh, she's good, isn't she? And that little table there is actually from the Clerical Award. So the award will actually have the classifications and the hourly rates in the award and in the pay guides. So that's just a really quick example of the Clerical Award there. Thank you. Okay, so once you've had a bit of an overall look and checked to see if anyone's had a birthday, check to see that the classifications are all okay, making sure that no hours have changed, making sure no roles and responsibilities have changed, it's really good then to look at the employees' salaries. So there'll be one of two ways you'll be paying your team. You'll be paying award rates or award minimum rates. If you are doing this, and that's absolutely fine, then you will have to increase in line with the new rates that are being published currently. You cannot go under the legal award minimums. And again, the pay guides are all available from Fair Work. And as Carly says, it's really good to go directly to the Fair Work website and check them to make sure that you are operating off of the correct ones. Magic, thank you. Oh, and just to let you know that in Fair Work, they have just had a wonderful update of their website. But if you're looking for the pay guides, if you open up the award, just down on the right-hand side, you'll see a few options and summaries. If you click on that, it will bring up the actual pay guides, which will then download into PDF version for you. So the other option for employers to pay their employees is to pay above award rates. So essentially that is you saying, okay, I'm going to pay this person a salary, or I know that person should be earning X amount per hour, so I will pay Y. So if this is the case, this is where we are going to undertake what we would call a benchmarking or a better off overall test. So this essentially is a test where we compare what the employee would be entitled to for the hours that they work in the classification that they are under the award in comparison to what you are paying them as that above award rates. It's really good, and a lot of awards now have introduced annualized salary clauses. It's really, really good for you guys if you're paying above award rates for you to know what we would call the outer limits are of what you have included in that above award rate. It's also really good to mention that if you are paying above award rates, it's absolutely great practice if you have a contract that stipulates an offset clause, and this will essentially outline what is included in that salary. So it could be things like loading allowances, or it could be your penalty rates or overtime rates. So when we're looking at above award rates, it's really good for us and for you to understand what is kind of included in that pay rate. You may remember over the last few years that there's been many big, not scandals, that's not the right word, but there have been many cases where there have been major companies that have been pulled up for underpayments. And this essentially occurs because people pay what they think is over award rates and they think they're doing the right thing. But actually, when someone registers their timesheets or says, well, I've actually been working lots of overtime or lots of penalty rates, that's where the underpayments tend to occur because the penalty rates aren't accounted for. So it's really good to know what is included in your above award rates, because if that person starts to go over those outer limits, you're at risk of underpayments. So really quick example. Now, we're going to have to thank Carly for the example of Betty and Bill, and she'll give you a smirk and she'll tell you why later. So we've got an example here. So Betty is essentially a reception/admin person in an allied health clinic. Forgive me for using all the health professional examples. It's my comfort zone. So Betty works 22.5 hours a week part-time. She works 7.5 of those hours on a shift work basis. So that would mean she works after 6 p.m. in this instance. And the rest are her ordinary hours. So she works between Monday to Friday between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Now, in these calculations, we actually include leave loading into her hourly rate. So that's that 17.5% added onto the 4 weeks of annual leave each year. So in this instance, you'll see on the bottom line, the employee line, at the top line there, you'll see award entitlement. We can see that a level 3 support staff team member should be paid a minimum of $26.23 per hour. Now, I will do some real-time ones in a moment just to show you, but this is how we organise our benchmarking. So the key figures that you sort of need to know are those last 3 columns. So you've got total weekly pay, you've got your minimum annual salary and the minimum boot rate. So you will see that the bottom 2 sections are green, which is green for go, green for good. So we can see that the shift work and the ordinary hours under the award entitlement would total $619.62 per week. And under the rate that she is being paid, the $30, she is actually being paid $675 per week. So essentially, she is better off overall on the $30 an hour rate, as opposed to the $26, $23 plus the shift work rates. And you'll see right on the end there, the minimum boot rate would have to be $27.54 to actually compensate for those hours. So she's actually being paid a little bit above what the minimum boot rate would be to cover that. So that's a big tick for Betty. She's being paid above award rates. Now, the next example we have is Bill. Now, Bill's working a 38-hour week, so he's working full-time. He's a health professional practitioner. He's level 2 pay point 4. Again, leave loading is included in his hourly rate, but his employers have decided to pay him a salary of $80,000 per annum. So this calculates down to $40.49 an hour. And we know now, because of the new rates, that the award rate is $39.63 per hour for a level 2 pay point 4. And again, you'll see the same situation there. You'll see the total ordinary hours is 38 per week. So he, on that award rate, he should be being paid $1,505.90, being paid $40.49 an hour. He's actually being paid better off at $1,538.62. And again, there you'll see what the actual minimum boot rates are on the far right-hand side. Now, we're going to try and do some wizardry at the moment. So bear with us. I'm just going to try and share my screen. So we're just going to come off of our thing, and I am just going to show you. So I'm hoping that you can all see that wonderfully. So this is our setup. I'm giving you a glimpse behind the curtain here.
Maybe increase the size a little bit, Frances.
I'll increase it a little bit. Can you see that a bit better now?
Yeah, that's better.
There we go. I'll have to move it across. Hang on. I told you there'd be technical difficulties. So like I say, this is a bit of a glimpse behind the curtain of what we get up to. And some of you who may be clients have probably already experienced our benchmarking. Now, this is how we structure it. There are 1,000,001 other ways that you can do these calculations. There's no right or wrong. It's just what works for you. What's important is that you can compare side by side what the minimum award rates are and what you're paying your employees. So like I say, this is just how we do it. And you'll see when I click on certain cells that we've got formulas and calculations in the background. But as I mentioned, you can do it whichever way you'd like. So you can see here that we have all the information on the top there. So I'm looking at Betty's $30 an hour boot rate. So that's her current rate of pay. Row 7 is what the suggested boot rate is, which links up to this column here. That's the award minimum hourly rate, the $26.23. And again, you've got the row 11 and row 12, which are the award entitlements and the employee entitlements. So I've highlighted these columns here. So as we have ours set up, really the only things we need to input are the award rates and the hours that these people work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, hopefully, fingers crossed, show you how we progress through our benchmarking. So you'll see there I've put in the hours that we mentioned before. Betty works 15 hours between Monday to Friday, 6 till 6, and then works a shift work, presumably after 6 p.m. one day of the week. Now, if I change that up and I give Betty a Saturday shift, I'm going to reduce her ordinary hours down to 7.5. I'm then going to add a Saturday shift in at 7.5 and leave her shift work in there. Let's say she works Thursday late, Friday during the day, and then works a day on Saturday. You'll see there, magically, that these two columns now have gone red. So this is why it's really important to know and understand that changes in your team's hours can have a very big impact on your boot rates. So if she works those 3 days, taking into account that Saturday hours are overtime hours for the Monday to Friday ordinary hours, her weekly pay now goes below what the minimum award requirements are. and the 7.5, you'll see that it goes back up. Now, the other thing that we also include is what the outer limits are. So we can see from this top row that she's being paid about $55, $60 an hour per week, more than what she should, or more than what the minimum award rates are. So what we do in this instance is we try and find out what the outer limits are. So you'll see here in columns G and H, the overtime hours. So these are calculated at the first 2 hours being 150% of the award minimums, and that's 200% for 2 hours thereafter. So you'll see those two figures there are calculated, and you'll see there that I've actually put in how many hours per week overtime you could pay at this flat rate for what she works per week. So essentially she could work 25.5 hours per week, being paid at the $30 an hour for those 25.5 hours, which would include 15 hours of ordinary work, 7.5 hours of shift work, and 3 hours of overtime. Now, the tipping point here is if I change that to 4. So we know that Betty cannot work more than 3 hours per week, in addition to her ordinary hours. And you'll also see there that if she does start to work a regular 4 hours of overtime, she needs to be paid $30.31 as a boot minimum. So I'll take Bill, and let's make Bill's boot a little bit bigger so everyone can see, maybe too big. So with Bill, we've got an $80,000 per annum salary. So doing it an hourly rate and doing a salary, it's absolutely fine either way, but they both convert to either. So if you're paying an hourly rate, we can say that, you know, if you're being paid $40.49, we know that that's an $80,000 salary. Or vice versa, if you want to pay $80,000, we calculate that back down to an hourly rate. It's important to understand that you should always base your salaries, if you like, your annual salaries, on full-time equivalents. And we calculate that based on 38 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. So you are calculating the whole year. So that includes annual leave, that includes public holidays. So that's how we calculate it. So you'll see there that we've calculated the $80,000 per year equates to about $40.49 per hour. Now, we can see here that Bill does his ordinary hours, so that's 38 hours per week. He works all of those between 6 and 6, Monday to Friday. And you can see here that he is, of course, above award rates. Now, again, I've added in an hour of overtime to show you what the buffer is, or what the tipping point is for Bill. So his overtime hour of 1 hour at 150% is okay. He can work an extra hour per week and be paid for the 39 hours that he works. But if he works 2 hours extra a week, it tips over. It's not enough to compensate him for. So if he works an extra 2 hours, if he works an extra hour, that's fine. If he works an extra 2 hours, that's where you've got the risk of underpayment. And again, you could do a time and lieu arrangement. You could pay him for that extra hour. It's not the end of the world. It's just knowing and understanding where the boundaries are and the limits are. And again, if we change this and said, okay, well, now he's going to do maybe a day, or he might do 5 hours on a shift work. Again, changing that isn't going to affect it potentially, but again, there will be a tipping point. So if he does 1 day of shift work and 30 ordinary hours, he's now tipped over again. It's not enough to pay him. So when people come to ask you about whether they can maybe change their hours or work a later shift, things like that, this is why it's really good to understand what is and isn't included in their hourly rates.
And I think it's important. There's a couple of points that are really important. One, it depends how many hours you work to how much is actually included in there. So if you're a 38-hour-a-week person earning a couple of dollars above the award, then you probably have a lot more room to move to the outer limit than you are if you're a 15-hour-a-week person earning the same amount above the award. And often we find clients get a little bit confused when they've got someone who's part-time that has to be on a higher rate. But then if they work a Saturday or a shift work, that's why, because they don't have as many hours to accumulate that extra to use it to offset what they're entitled to. And the other thing too is, look, if we know in this scenario that if Bill works 1 hour a week, he's fine of overtime. Now, if he only works 2 hours of overtime once a month, he's still going to be okay, because it'll average out over time. But it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. And it's particularly important with part-timers, because probably the biggest place that we see people get in trouble is with part-timers. And that is because under almost every single award, there's a very few exceptions. If you're a part-timer, whatever your set hours are, additional hours are overtime. And so often that's where, if someone's working full-time, I think people grasp that really easily, but people go, oh, well, it's okay if someone just works an extra shift because someone's on leave, but it may not be. And often that's where we find the problems.
And I think you're absolutely 100% right. General rule of thumb is that if you've got more penalty rate hours than ordinary hours, your boot rate will always be higher. Always, because there's not enough in the ordinary hours to absorb it. And I think you're quite right, again, saying that, if he works 2 hours across a month, again, he's still going to be better off. But, and we were talking about this earlier, employers need to make sure that employees are tracking their time. So they need to have timesheets. Absolutely no circumstances where they shouldn't have timesheets. It's the onus of proof on the employer to be able to say, yes, you've worked these hours per week. So you will need to track, because what will happen is if Bill does 2 hours per month, that's fine. But if it starts to slip into Bill doing 3, 4, 5, 6 hours per month, and he's not being compensated for that, that's where the issues are going to lay. So timesheets are essential. Everyone should be doing timesheets so that they know and they can track the hours, especially under annualized salaries. But in all cases, so everyone should be tracking their hours. And again, as Carly says, part-time people especially, because anything over their contracted hours that then they're not either being paid for or time in lieu needs to be absorbed or needs to be paid for. And again, that's where that risk of underpayment comes in.
And we see people get in trouble because, well, some awards actually now stipulate that you must keep timesheets too. That a number of awards have brought that in. But also, it's still a myth out there that people go, oh, but they're on an annualised salary and they're way above the award, it doesn't matter. Well, they might be way above the award, but if they ever query that, if they ever say, I think I was underpaid for the hours I actually worked, how are you going to prove that they weren't? The only way to do that is to have the timesheets and go, well, I can demonstrate through something like a boot test that I was paying them sufficiently. And we've seen examples of when that's not the case. And we've seen examples where it is the case, but they can't prove it because there's no timesheets being done. So you need to be recording exactly, even if you're paying them an annual salary in the same amount every fortnight, you still need to be doing timesheets.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And I will say, if you do have any questions as we go along, make sure you throw them in the Q&A, because we will go through and answer a whole heap of them at the end.
I'm more than happy to bring back my Excel spreadsheet if you need.
You want to switch back?
Yeah, we'll go back to the presentation. Do I need to stop sharing?
No, I think I can override you.
Ooh.
I have the power.
You do. Magical. All right, next slide then, please.
And Francis's earlier comment was the fact that Betty and Bill are my grandparents. Whenever I got to pick names, I usually go to someone in the family.
And it's nice. I like it. So essentially, what do you need to do? So you're either paying minimum award rates. If that's the case, you do need to increase your employee's salary. Or you're paying above award rates, you do need to conduct a benchmarking or a better off overall test, and you need to check your compliance with the new rates. If you're no longer paying enough, or it's getting a little bit too close to call, you should adjust the pay rate to make sure that you are compensating correctly. If you do a boot and your employees are still well within the outer limits of the award minimums, then any increase that you provide can absolutely be voluntary. And I'm going to hand back to Carly now to talk about salaries.
Yeah. So I really want to emphasize here that build on what Francis has just said, that it is voluntary. If you're paying legally, anything that you do pay in addition is voluntary. So once you've checked and you're like, yep, everybody is fine, it can be very tempting to go, well, I'm not going to increase pays. But I'd also like you to think about a couple of other issues when it comes to setting salaries. Particularly in today's market, and particularly for those people. I mean, we have kind of used a few examples from the Health Professionals Award today, mainly because our whole team has been head first in that, with 40% of our business being in that space. And we did look at who we had registered for today, and probably 70% of people are from that industry. But regardless of the industry you're in, people know that the minimum award goes up on the 1st of July. And they know that, particularly if they've got family members that are on the minimum rates, they know that. It's been on the news, minimum wage is going up. So even though they may not be entitled to an increase, we're in an environment where cost of living is increasing for everybody. And I know how tempting it is as an employer to say, well, I need to keep my costs down, so everybody's still being paid legally, I'm going to absorb it. Get them to absorb it. And, we're not going to, we're still paying okay, and that's fine. But that is, if that's the message you're giving to your team, then that message is you're a cost. And I still think that I know that I'm paying you correctly, so I don't want to increase my cost by giving you anything extra. And I think you need to think about what the implications are on that for retention, because we all know at the moment in majority of industries, if we're out trying to recruit someone new into the business, we're having to pay. We're having to pay more. And guess what? Your employees are not silly. Even if you've got a great workplace, if there's someone who at this particular point in their life, they're quite motivated by money, and they do a quick Seek search and see jobs equivalent to theirs being advertised for 5 or 10 grand above what they're earning, they will start looking. And you may be in a position where they come to you and say, well, I'm going if you don't match this. And that's the worst place to be when you do salary increases. You'd rather proactively give someone a salary increase and say, I value you. This is, and that, look, you're still being paid above the award, but I want to maintain you at that level above the award. I want to recognise that you've stayed and you're a great part of our team. And look, depending on which report or which research you look at, it can cost anywhere between 6 to 12 months of somebody's salary to replace them. And that's not just it's the cost of the downtime if you've got someone not in the role. It's the cost of recruiting someone, the time that takes, the time of getting someone in, having them come up to speed with how you do things. So being on top of what is going on in your market is important to recruit and attract people, but it is a lot more important when it comes to retaining people, because if you don't value the people you have and value that it's a lot cheaper to keep the people you've got than it is to bring in new people, then, they will start looking, and they will start looking elsewhere. And let's be honest, in most industries, people have friends in that industry and they talk to people in that industry, and they know. We've got one particular person I was speaking to recently, and they work in an industry, and I won't say which industry it is, but they work in an industry where they've always kind of played just a little bit above the award. The problem is it's a really hard industry to recruit for. It's a very specific technical area. And the thing is, they still want to pay now what they've always paid, which is, that just little bit above the award. But they're finding people, they're recruiting, they're finding people, they're applying for the job. But then when they find out what the salary is, they're going, well, hang on, I can go work in a warehouse and get $10 an hour more than that. And I know I can. So yes, I'd rather work for you and I'd rather do your job, but for $10 an hour more, I'm going to go work in a warehouse and do a job that's a no-brainer. So you need to, it may have been what you've paid in the past. It may have been something that you've bought, but if you can't attract and retain people with that salary, and then if you're losing other employees because they find out their mate got a job at a warehouse paying $10 an hour more than what you're paying for, people will chase that. Unless money is a non-issue for them. And let's be honest, there's not very many people in that position. So you know, it is a starting point to make sure you're paying legally, and we want to make sure, you know, compliance is incredibly important. But I really want everyone to think about the fact that, yes, I've ticked the box on compliance, but now I need to think about increases. And look, you can be honest with your employees. You can say to them, look, things are tight at the moment. I want to, like, so I'm going to give you an increase. It's probably not as much as you would like, but I'll review it again in 6 months, because hopefully things will turn around a little bit if things are tough. I know way back, when 15 years ago, when, I was working, when we went through the GFC and the global financial crisis, and we went to, I was working in a car dealership, and we went to the employees, we go, look, we know that this is a time of year we normally increase. We don't have and the thing is, employees are also not silly. They understand what's happening economically around the world. They understand that it's not always possible, but saying to them, look, we'd love to give you a 5% increase, but it's just not sustainable now. So we're going to give you 2% now. But what we want to do is assure you that we're going to look at this again in 6 months. And if the circumstances have changed, we will look at it again. You know, communicating and being honest. Most people will go, okay, I get that. And that they'll come along on the journey with you, but you need to at least acknowledge where they're at. You need to acknowledge that, you know, if they start going out and looking, it is a job seekers market at the moment. And if they go start looking, they will go out and find something, and then you won't have them. And then you're going to have a double problem of having to pay someone probably even more than what you'd have to have paid as an increase to bring someone into your business. The other thing, of course, is if you are recruiting in and you are having to pay more and you don't adjust your current employees' salaries to match that, they will find out. Because guess what? We had a change to the Fair Work Act the end of last year, and it talked about, and you are not allowed to have pay secrecy clauses in your contracts anymore. Employees are allowed to share their salary. So if you've got 5 people doing a job and 2 people started in the last 3 months and you had to pay them 10% more than what you're paying your existing employees, they will find out, and they will not be happy that you are not bringing them up to that market rate. So attention and retraction should be really important. Where can you find out about current market salaries? Talk to other people in your industry, go to your professional associations, do some research, look, Google the jobs, go and seek out jobs that if you or your employees that you might be looking for, and not just the same job. You know, if you've got jobs in your business, think about somebody with a specific skill set. So for example, when you're getting someone who's like an entry-level administration job, they might be looking at entry-level administration jobs, but you're also competing against entry-level data entry jobs, entry-level receptionist, entry-level, but even working in a warehouse or doing something else. So you need to understand the market, you know, who are the type of people that are applying for that role and what are the other roles that they're applying for. Baristas are getting paid really well at the moment because skilled baristas are considered to be one of the top 10 positions in the country. And as someone who loves coffee, I get that. But if you're in a situation, I was actually talking to my daughter about this today. One of her friends who's just finished a degree, who has been working somewhere else, is going for a job where she's going to be getting like something like $7 an hour more working as a barista than she was getting working in an office environment. And so you're competing against that. You need to take that into consideration if you want to attract the right people to your business. So there's just a couple of things there you need to think about. And I think you can't just go, well, I'm paying correctly, I'm not paying illegally, I'm going to set and forget. So what are the next steps that you should take? Any changes that you make, you should confirm in writing with your employee. So if you have employment agreements, and I really hope that you all do, you don't have to do a new employment agreement every time you change someone's wages, but what you can do is a change of conditions letter. So you can give them a letter that says, effective from this date, your new pay increase will be X. All other conditions remain the same. Ask them to sign to accept it. That's a paper trail for you to demonstrate when their rate increased and that they accepted that rate increase. Make sure your payroll systems are updated with the new rates. Now, the other thing I want to say is that you don't have to rush this process. As much as everyone's like going, oh, 1st of July, and it's a panic stations, it actually isn't, because you can make a pay increase effective from the 1st of July and give it in September if you really want to, as long as you back pay that increase. So take your time. You don't have to rush through making increases. If you want to take your time, you want to check everything, you want to sit down with your employees, it's perfectly fine to say, I'm going to sit down with you in mid-July and any increase is going to be backdated to the 1st of July. It's a little bit more administration, but that's okay. Also need to touch on the fact that superannuation changes are effective 1 July as well. So in line with the existing legislation, it will increase to 11%. I'm only going to briefly touch on this because we hate it when people have a salary package that says, I want $80,000 a year inclusive of super. And the reason we hate that is because superannuation increases and it causes a lot of confusion. So if you have a contract that specifically states and is very clearly worded that any increases in super will be absorbed by the employee, then you can decrease their salary and increase their super and adjust it accordingly. If you don't have something that's written that way, then you need to increase their super from 10.5% to 11% without reducing their base salary component. Anyone that works with us know we encourage you can say, here's your total REM package, but break it down in the contract so it's really clear which components are which. And coming back to retention and attraction, what message does it send to your employees if you go, you know what, you're on $90,000 a year, super's gone up, so your take-home salary has just decreased because I'm increasing your super. You're treating them as a cost. It's not a good look. They might know that, they might understand that, but it's not going to make them feel pretty good. So there's a lot of unintended effects of doing that. So absolutely you can frame something as a total REM package so that they understand the value of what their superannuation is. But we highly recommend that you don't have a rate that says this is inclusive of super. It also makes it really difficult when we actually had a recent case with one of our clients where, because it wasn't clearly broken out in the contract, it was set up wrong in payroll. And so therefore though the employee was getting paid actually above what was in their contract because they were getting paid the 10.5% on top of their base and it caused a whole lot of issues. So but you need to be aware that it goes up to 11%. Personally, I'm happy with that because when it comes to calculating things in your head, it's much easier to calculate 11% than 10.5.
And can I just add to that as well, Carly, that the pay guides in Fair Work do not include superannuation.
Yeah, if you have a salary that's including super, we're gonna have to break it out anyway because every comparison needs to be done like for like. That like for like is not inclusive of super. So, what else has changed with the minimum wage increase? From the 1st of July, the application fee for unfair dismissal will increase to $83.30. So if someone wants to make an application, that has gone up. It does apply to dismissal, general protections, bullying, sexual harassment applications, I believe, are exempt at the moment, but that's what it would cost someone to take an unfair dismissal. It goes up every year, it's indexed. Also the high income threshold for people who are excluded from unfair dismissal has gone up to $167,500. And the new compensation limit, so the maximum amount of compensation someone can claim an unfair dismissal has gone up to $83,750. I will say there, because I see this happen all the time, not that we do a massive amount of unfair dismissals, but when we do, people can often say, I want to reinstatement, and the maximum is 6 months salary at the minimum wage. So that's why that amount has been set. And just lastly, it's this time of the year, it's really good to have a look at a couple of things. So I would review any arrangements you have with current contractors and any arrangements you have with current casuals, because these are two areas we see people get into trouble with. And it may be that over time, someone started off as a true contractor or they've been a true casual, but over time and over the last 12 months, they're now pretty much working for you exclusively. They're working close to, if not full-time hours. And it may be a good opportunity before it becomes an issue for you to think about whether that person should continue to be, is actually operating as a contractor and should continue as a contractor, or, and you know, there's different types of contractual arrangements, but I'm talking about someone who's basically paid by the hour to work in your business. And also casual arrangements. So sometimes casual arrangements can move into a regular pattern of work, a systematic pattern of work. It actually can be more cost effective for you to move them to a permanent form of work. So, you know, there's some discussions that we can help you have, but I always think it's just another trigger to this time of year to go, hey, let's have a look at this and not set and forget. And remember that there have been changes to the Fair Work Act in the last 6 months. Those changes have included things around sexual harassment, around domestic violence leave being paid now for larger businesses. Small businesses will start from August. And the biggest one that came in last December was pay secrecy clauses. So no new contracts should be given out that have a pay secrecy clause. But now, if you're doing an increase, is a really good time to give all your existing employees a updated contract or agreement that doesn't have that pay secrecy clause in it anymore. Having that in doesn't negate that contract because it's an existing contract. That clause is negated, but often it's a much softer approach to say, hey guys, this year's pay rise, we're also going to give you the updated version of these contracts. There's been some changes to Fair Work. Here's what they are. And here's the great thing with that. If you're increasing someone's salary and they are still better off overall without that increase, and they say, well, I don't want to sign over to a new contract, you can say, well, that increase is actually tied to that contract. So if you don't accept that new contract, you stay on what you're on now. And you can leave them on that rate if they refuse to sign on to a new contract for as long as you like, as long as they're still being paid legally. So honestly, I prefer to take them on a journey, communicate with them, let them know what the changes are. We're updating. There's been a number of changes to Fair Work. It's a great opportunity to get everybody onto the same new contract, but now's a good time to do that. And also, as a flow on from that is obviously HR policies. We've just been updating all the contracts for our clients and all their policy manuals. Poor Chloe, I think he's going to be in a white padded room soon after doing all that. But again, it's a good opportunity to maybe at this time of the year, just let everyone, do a refresh of your policy manual, reflect the changes that have come in over the last 6 months and issue a new version to your employees and get them to sign to say that they've read and understood it. So that's about it from what we're going to cover in content today. I do want to mention that our next webinar, our July webinar, the lovely Callie Finesse, who is our recruitment advisor, is going to talk about some of our tips and hints about trying to find new employees in a tough market. So that will be our July webinar. We also have some upcoming leadership training. We have some public courses in Melbourne in August and Sydney in September. Anyone who's an existing client of Strawberry Seed, we have discount codes if you've done work with us before. So please reach out if you're interested in attending those. The Sydney one's in the CBD, the Melbourne one is in Essendon. We have some online mental health first aid with Francis has scheduled out a couple of sessions towards the end of the year. So that one is it's a blended online version so that you attend online. We've just completed the June mental health first aid workshop last week in Torquay, and we have one in Melbourne in November as well, an in-person 2-day workshop. So if you're interested in any of those, reach out to us, check out the training courses on our website. And that's my dog trying to break in again. And just finally, if you don't already, follow us on our socials. We share updates about things like this. We share about what's happening. You can also jump on our website and sign up to our newsletter, The Punnet, and where we let you know about what's coming up. And we also on our website and also on our YouTube channel have all of our previous webinars. So we have copies there if you ever want to catch up, and this one will be posted there as well as sent to everybody today. So let's jump to the Q&A.
Would you like me to read them for you, Carly? I've got them up as I've got them.
That'd be lovely.
Oh, wonderful. So number one question, can you put in a contract for part-time people saying hours up to 25 hours or between 23 and 25 hours if the hours change slightly each week?
Nope.
And that would be to avoid the penalty rates.
Nope. No, you can't. You would have to each week, if you wanted to vary their hours every week in writing, and look, it could be an email. You need to say, you need to basically do a variation letter, essentially each week to vary them. You can't. a permanent employee, a part-timer working 25 hours a week is no different than a full-timer working 38 hours a week. They're entitled to those hours and anything else. Now, there are some exceptions to that. The restaurant award is an exception to that. There's a very small number of exceptions to that. But no, you can't specify a range. You can't, casual employment allows you to vary it. That's what casual employment is. Permanent employment means you are guaranteed those permanent hours. So the answer to that is a very easy no.
Thank you kindly. Next question. Wonderful. Thank you for this. That spreadsheet is excellent. Is there any way we could access this after the presentation? Thanks, smiley face.
Yes, there's a nice smiley face there. Anyone who gets us to do their benchmarking, we do it in that spreadsheet. They get a copy of it. They get to keep it. They get to play with it, but we don't share it unless we're actually doing that. That's our IP. So yes, we are, anyone that gets us to do their benchmarking for them actually gets that. They get that version. They get to keep it. They get to play with it. They can update it themselves every year if they like. Our HR support clients are currently in the process of basically, what are we up to, about 120 audits that we're doing at the moment, Frances?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. This is our favourite time of the year. So we're in the process of doing those audits right now. And a lot of our previous fixed price clients or other clients do sometimes every couple of years get us to do an update for them. And then, yes, we provide you once we've done the work with that spreadsheet, but no, we don't just share that spreadsheet because that's kind of, our IP.
Sorry. Another great question, is the super increase timing the same as wages, i.e. the first full pay period after the 1st of July? Or I'm assuming, does it just apply from the 1st of July?
I think it's a really good question. Here's the thing about what we do. I always say, if you want to define what strawberry seed and what's your accountant, is the ATO versus Fair Work. Now, the ATO sets superannuation. That's an ATO question. They set super. They have those requirements, and Fair Work set the minimum wages and awards. I actually don't know the answer to that. I assume that as long as I assume you would do it within. You're not going to. I don't think you're going to have to sort of adjust it for a couple of days. But that might be a question for your accountant and bookkeeper. I don't want to answer that definitively, basically because that's an ATO type question, and we have enough trouble keeping up to date with what's happening in the world of Fair Work without stepping into the ATO lane.
Marvellous. Okay, good question. Does a practice management software such as, now I'm going to say it wrong, Clinkio, I think it is. Clinico? Clinico, that's the one. Thanks, guys.
I presented with the Clinico, the founder of Clinico, up at the ESSA conference. So,
oh, we better get it right then. Goodness. Sorry. Does a practice management software such as Clinico that has client appointments count as a timesheet?
No, because that's not the time they're working. That's the time they're seeing clients. A timesheet is I worked 4 days this week, and on each of those days I started at this time and I finished at that time. That's a timesheet. Look, most accounting softwares have them built in. Like, if you use Xero or MyOb, they have them there. If not, there's a lot of add-ons that you can find, but no, client appointments are when they saw clients. If they only had 3 clients that day, that's not how many hours they worked, that's how many clients they saw.
I'm guessing it could be used as some form of guide if you were unsure of when they worked, if they were in the office, etc. But as Carly says, that's just when they're seeing clients. That doesn't mean that's when they were working.
Yeah.
Okay, do I need to offer my casual employees been working for over 12 months a chance to change to part-time if their shifts have been fairly consistent last year?
Absolutely. I would make them, you don't have to. And, it's when they've been regular and systematic. If they are working as a true casual, these days, if they've started fairly new and they've got their casual Fair Work information sheet and other things, you're a little bit more protected. But I just think if they're working those regular and systematic hours, you can offer it to them, and I would offer it to them in writing. And then if they say, no, I want to stay casual, that's fine, that's their prerogative. But it is good practice to at least once a year, have a conversation with them about it.
Marvellous. Fabulous question here. When would we anticipate these boots to be ready?
The boots. Frances is frozen at my end, so I'm not sure if she's frozen for everyone. The boots, the boots, we are working through them. Like our team is going through them as quickly as they can. As I said, the rates literally dropped into the awards. And look, I've been asked this week, and I think it's important to note the reason we wait until the boot amount is actually in the award. Oh, sorry, the award amounts have been published in the award, is because when the awards are reviewed, there's a whole heap of submissions from different industries and different, you know, for example, if you work in the aged care award, it's actually gone up a significant amount. It's gone up more than the 5.75% this year. But what can happen is different professions, different industries can put submissions in to try and have adjustments made to the award. So even though the majority will go up by the 5.75%, until it's published, we don't like to go and start, you know, we're ready to do the boots. If you've asked us to do a boot for you, or you're one of our support clients, we literally do them in the order we receive them. So we sent out to people last month all of their spreadsheets and asked them to complete them. Basically, our whole team has been head down, bum up, getting them done this whole week, and you will get them as soon as we can get them to you. Honestly, we have 120, well, not all 120 of our support clients get them done, but like quite a few of them, and we literally just do them in the order we receive them back. So the people that got back to us quickly will get theirs back also quickly. It's the fairest way we can do it, because we can't physically do over 100 immediately, but we've had them ready to go, and they're just getting updated and sent, and they're updated, checked by another staff member, because they can be complex. Some of our clients have a number of employees, they have a lot of changes. Those that are quick and easy probably get back really quickly. You'll get them back really quickly. If yours have had a lot of changes, they might not, but we are getting them done as soon as possible. Now, remember, it's the first pay period after the 1st of July. So depending when your pay period is done, we're getting as many back as quickly as we can. I mean, it would have been nice if they updated them a little earlier, considering that they announced it a couple of weeks ago, but we were hamstrung. So yeah, but you will get them back as soon as humanly possible. And every single one of our team has got time blocked out. That's what they're working on at the moment. That's why they're, you know, and poor Frances has also been ill this week. So she's been doing it and she's been ill. So, you know, everybody is doing it the best they can.
Definitely need to double check. Am I back? Am I okay? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Oh, magic. So the end of that question was, is it okay essentially to back pay staff if they're underpaying? Absolutely. So like, you know, if you're, and look, you're not going to be getting them back in September. You know, you're going to get, if anything, you'll get them back within the next week or so. So, you know, if you realize that, you can just easily back pay. And let's be honest, we're not talking about hundreds of dollars. We're probably talking about, we do a slight back pay when I realized they should have increased. I had to do one this earlier this year. My bookkeeper pointed out to me that had I looked at my one person who's under an award, and when I checked, she was above the award and she'd just gone over when she had hit her anniversary date. So she got 3 weeks of back pay of extra, and she's also my daughter and she was also heading on holiday. So she thought that was the greatest thing ever. As long as you do it and you let people know and say, hey, we're just waiting for a bit of an audit. Once it comes back, you'll have it. And if there's any increases, they'll be back paid to the 1st of July. Again, it's about telling the team that, you know, communicating that it is being done. It's just, it's a process that does take time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question, what's the best way to track progression through award levels, annually or via hours worked each year? Timesheets question.
Okay, so it depends. It's a hard question because it depends on your award. So some awards will progress you on a calendar year. Some awards will progress you on hours worked. We have a couple of clients that actually that kind of do it this time of the year, and do it this time of the year taking into consideration when people's anniversaries are. So they pay enough above the award that they're kind of got a bit of a safety net in there. It's up to you. I mean, it's tricky. Look, you can do it on everyone's anniversary date and check, but again, full-time employees are pretty easy. If you know that a full-time employee progresses for every 12 months of work, but if they're part-time, how many hours have they actually, if you go on their ordinary hours. So if they're a 0.6, then it's probably a year and 2/3 and they're going to go up. But again, it depends. This also comes back to, are you paying them above the award already? And it can kind of absorb we're not talking about like $10 an hour every progression point. So when you've got a small number of employees, it's really easy to do it on their anniversary date. When you get to a larger number of employees, it's a bit harder. So, and the thing is too, if you go in and do your boot, and once you've done your boot, you realise that, oh, they were fine up until this date with the new classification, but but now the increase on top of that classification put them outside the boot, then you're fine. So it's a really hard question to answer specifically, but it's really a preference. And a lot of people, for example, if they've had people work with them since graduates, they know at the start of every year that they're going to progress, and they're full time, they're going to progress up. It's a little bit trickier when you've got people that have come in from elsewhere.
I know I did a back pay calculation for a client a little while ago, and we did actually track the progression through the award levels through the hours that they'd worked because they were part-time. So I'm not sure whether that helps answer your question as well, but there's a couple of different approaches.
You have to be at least conscious of it. But, if you think to yourself, okay, this person works about 50%, then they'll probably have to progress every 2 years. Or, and you might go, well, they're a year and a half. I've got to progress them every 2 years. I might progress them now because I'm already doing this review.
Yeah. Next question. I'm not quite sure of what the intention is, but it says, what about reasonable additional hours for timesheets for allied health practitioners?
So they need to be recording what they're actually working. That doesn't mean you're going to pay them for those hours, because if they're on a salary that includes reasonable additional hours, then they're just going to get paid that salary. But their timesheet should reflect the hours they actually worked. So, and the reason for that is that then you have a record of, if they ever come back and say, well, I don't think you're paying me enough to cover those additional hours, you have a record to what additional hours they actually worked, and you can actually prove that they did. If you don't have a record of that at all, then how are you going to prove? And the onus is always on the employer to prove that they did pay correctly, not the employee to prove they didn't. And the only way to do that is to keep timesheets. So it's saying to someone, we want you to record your actual hours that you work every week. Yes, you're salaried, you're going to get paid the same every week, but we still want you to record them because we want to make sure that we're paying you correctly.
Magical. And last question, where do we find the downloadable version of the minimum award rates again? So when you open up the award in the Fair Work website, there'll be, on the left-hand side, there'll be all the clauses, there'll be numbers, and you can click on those. In the middle section, there will be the bulk of the award. And on the right-hand side, there will be a couple of different headings. I think there's variations, there's something else, and then there's summaries. If you click on summaries, it will expand and it will show you all the pay rates, and it actually has each year's pay rates. So actually, even if you wanted to go back to last year, year before, they are all listed there.
Yeah, if you're concerned that you haven't been paying correctly because you haven't done this for a couple of years, you can go back and find out what the pay rate was every year to check it.
Yeah. If
you want the current rates, Google your award pay guide 2020 July 2023. Google, that's your best bet. But if you go to the Fair Work pay website, there's a search thing. Just search pay guide for your award or pay guides, and it'll come up, and you can there's like an alphabetized, you just click on find your right one. It'll
always be the top one on the summary section. So
yeah.
And that's it for questions, unless anyone else has any more.
Excellent. Well, that was great. I'm glad we could answer as many questions as we could. It is sometimes a little difficult to answer questions for everybody because, you don't want to get too specific. We are always more than happy to help you through. And look, a lot of our clients use their, spreadsheet that we've done for them when we first work with them, and they just update it every year. We actually try and set it up so it's really easy for them to update and see what the changes are every year. But obviously, if you're a HR support client, we're automatically doing that, and we will be that's what we're madly trying to do to get through. And we definitely need wine this time of year, and it also is for school holidays, so yay, that always adds a nice little extra additional thing for us this time of year that the 1st of July falls smack bang within the school holidays, and majority of our team are mums, so they're doing their absolute best to get them done as quickly as possible. And yeah, anyone that's waiting from them for us, I promise you will get them back very, very soon. So thank you everyone for your time. We appreciate it, and we will be sending this out to you shortly. And if you have any specific questions, as always, reach out to our team. But thank you for attending.
Thanks.